My brother vanished years ago. Now, a chilling discovery in the woods may hold the key to his disappearance. But what secrets does this journal reveal? The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while I was having my usual coffee. Detective Sarah Martinez's voice was steady, but I could hear the weight behind her words. "Marcus, we found something. Something that belonged to your brother." My hand trembled as I set down the mug. It had been 3 years since Ethan disappeared, without a trace. 3 years of sleepless nights, false leads, and the crushing weight of not knowing. The police had long since moved his case to the cold files, but Detective Martinez had never given up. "What did you find?" I asked, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted to know. "A journal. Hikers discovered it yesterday in Blackwood Forest, about 15 miles from where Ethan's car was found. Marcus, you need to see this." The drive to Blackwood Forest felt like it took forever, yet somehow not long enough. Detective Martinez met me at the trailhead, her expression grave. She led me deep into the woods, past towering pines and through undergrowth that seemed to whisper secrets. "The hikers found it here," she said, stopping at a clearing where yellow tape still marked the scene. It was wrapped in plastic, buried, under some rocks near that old oak tree. I stared at the spot, trying to imagine Ethan here. What had brought him to this remote place, and why had his journal been hidden like buried treasure? The plastic kept it mostly intact, Martinez continued, pulling out an evidence bag. Through the clear material, I could see Ethan's familiar handwriting on a water-stained leather cover. "Marcus, before you read this, are you sure you're ready?" Back at the station, I sat alone in a small room with Ethan's journal spread before me. The first entry was dated just 2 weeks before his disappearance. "Something's not right in this town. I've been tracking the stories, following the patterns. People have been going missing for decades, but everyone just looks the other way. The Hendersons in 1987, the Walsh family in 1995, Jennifer Coleman in 2003. All vanished without explanation. All dismissed as people who just moved away or started new lives somewhere else." My blood ran cold. This wasn't the Ethan I knew, my younger brother who taught elementary school and coached Little League. This was someone consumed by something dark, something dangerous. As I continued reading, Ethan's investigation became clearer. He had been obsessed with disappearances in our small town of Millbrook, going back nearly 40 years. His journal contained newspaper clippings, photocopied police reports, and detailed timelines. They all have something in common. One entry read, "Every single person who vanished had recently inherited property or come into money, and they all had dealings with Blackwood Development Company in the months before they disappeared." Blackwood Development. I knew that name. They were the company that had been buying up land around town for years, always offering prices too good to refuse. The same company that had made an offer on our family's cabin just months before Ethan vanished. The journal revealed that Ethan had been secretly investigating Thomas Blackwood, the reclusive owner of Blackwood Development. According to Ethan's notes, Blackwood had arrived in Millbrook in the 1980s and slowly began acquiring property throughout the region. "Blackwood never ages," Ethan had written. "I found a photograph from 1983 in the town archives. He looks exactly the same now as he did 40 years ago. Same face, same build, same cold eyes. How is that possible?" The entries became increasingly frantic as Ethan delved deeper into his investigation. He had discovered that Blackwood owned vast stretches of forest land, all of it off limits to the public. And somewhere in those woods, Ethan believed, lay the answers to decades of disappearances. One entry stood out, written in shaky handwriting that barely resembled Ethan's usual neat script. "They know I'm on to them. Someone broke into my apartment last night, but nothing was stolen. They just moved things around, left everything slightly out of place. A warning. I'm scared, but I can't stop now. Too many people have vanished for me to just walk away." My heart ached reading those words. Ethan had been terrified, but his sense of justice wouldn't let him abandon his investigation. He had always been like that, even as a kid, standing up to bullies, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. "If something happens to me, Look for the truth in the old Blackwood estate. There's a basement entrance behind the rose garden. That's where they take them. That's where it all happens. The last few entries in Ethan's journal were barely legible, written in what appeared to be extreme haste. I was right about everything. Blackwood isn't human, can't be. I followed him tonight and saw, God help me, I saw what he really is. The missing people, they're not dead. There's something else now, something wrong. He feeds on their life force, their essence. That's why he never ages. The disappeared become his servants, trapped in a state between life and death. I have to stop this. I have to find a way to free them. The final entry was dated the night Ethan disappeared. I'm going to the estate tonight. I know how to stop him, but I need to get close. If you're reading this and I'm not back, don't come looking for me. Call the FBI, call someone outside of town. Don't trust anyone local. Some of the police might be involved. Detective Martinez found me still reading hours later, tears streaming down my face. She sat across from me, her expression troubled. There's something else, Marcus. Something I haven't told you. She pulled out another file. We ran forensics on the journal, the last entry. It wasn't written 3 years ago when Ethan disappeared. My world tilted. What do you mean? The ink analysis shows it was written less than a month ago. Marcus, your brother might still be alive. The implications hit me like a physical blow. If Ethan was alive, if he had somehow survived whatever he'd encountered at the Blackwood estate, why hadn't he contacted me? Unless he couldn't. Against Detective Martinez's advice, I knew I had to investigate the old Blackwood estate, myself. If there was even a chance Ethan was still alive, I couldn't abandon him the way I felt the world had abandoned us both. I spent the next week preparing, researching everything I could about Thomas Blackwood and his properties. The estate had been built in 1885, originally belonging to a railroad baron who had died under mysterious circumstances. Blackwood had purchased it in 1983, shortly after arriving in Millbrook. The property was massive, surrounded by high walls and dense forest. According to county records, it included the main house, several outbuildings, and miles of private forest land. Perfect for hiding secrets. I entered Blackwood's property on a moonless night, following the route Ethan had detailed in his journal. The forest was eerily quiet, as if even the animals avoided this place. Ancient trees created a canopy so thick that my flashlight beam seemed to be swallowed by the darkness. The estate house loomed before me like something from a nightmare, a gothic monstrosity of stone and shadow. Just as Ethan had described, I found the rose garden behind the house, though the flowers had long since withered into black, twisted stems. Behind the dead roses, I discovered a stone stairway leading down into the earth. The basement was far larger than any normal foundation should be. Carved directly into the bedrock, it stretched out in multiple directions like an underground maze. The air was thick and cold, carrying strange scents I couldn't identify. Following Ethan's directions, I made my way deeper into the tunnels. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, and I began to hear sounds. Soft moaning, whispered voices, the shuffle of feet on stone. That's when I saw the cells, dozens of them, carved into the rock walls, and in many of them, figures sat in the darkness. They looked human, but something was wrong with their movements, their posture. As my flashlight beam swept across them, hollow eyes turned toward me. Marcus! I spun around at the sound of my name. There, in one of the cells, sat a figure I almost didn't recognize. Ethan was thinner than I remembered, his hair longer, his eyes haunted. But it was him. Ethan, oh God, you're alive! I rushed to the cell door, but there was no lock, no handle. The door seemed to be sealed shut. You shouldn't have come, he said, his voice hollow. He knows you're here now. He's been waiting for you. Who? Blackwood? Ethan nodded. He's not what we thought, Marcus. He's something ancient, something that feeds on human life force. These people, he gestured to the other cells, they're not dead, but they're not alive either. He keeps us here, draining us slowly to sustain himself. How? Touching. A family reunion. The voice came from behind me, cultured and cold. I turned to see Thomas Blackwood emerging from the shadows. He looked exactly as Ethan had described, ageless with pale skin and eyes like chips of ice. "You've caused me considerable trouble, Marcus. First your brother's meddling, now yours. I really hoped you would simply accept his disappearance and move on." "Let him go," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Let all of them go." Blackwood laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "I'm afraid that's impossible. They're part of me now, part of my life force. Without them, I would age and die like any mortal man. I've lived for centuries this way, and I intend to live for centuries more." What happened next seemed to occur in slow motion. Blackwood moved toward me with inhuman speed, but I was ready. I pulled out the iron cross Ethan had mentioned in his journal. Something he'd discovered could repel whatever Blackwood truly was. The creature recoiled from the iron, his perfect features twisting into something monstrous. "You cannot stop." "B-boy, I am eternal." But I had something he didn't expect. My brother had been planning this for 3 years. Hidden in his final journal entry, written in a code only I would understand from our childhood, were instructions. The symbols on the walls weren't random decorations. They were part of a binding spell that kept this place hidden from the outside world. I began destroying the symbols systematically, using the iron cross to scrape them from the stone walls. As each symbol was destroyed, the underground prison began to shake. Blackwood's victims started to stir, their consciousness returning as his hold over them weakened. The creature himself began to age rapidly, decades of stolen life force leaving him. "You don't understand," he screamed as his body crumbled. "Without me, they'll all die anyway. I was keeping them alive." But he was wrong. As the last symbol crumbled under my cross, the cell doors burst open. Ethan stumbled out, followed by dozens of others. People who had been missing for years, decades even. They were weak but alive, truly alive for the first time since their capture. Blackwood collapsed into dust, his centuries finally catching up with him. Epilogue: 6 months later, I stood in the same clearing where hikers had found Ethan's journal. But this time, I wasn't alone. Ethan stood beside me, healthy and whole, though forever changed by his experience. The Blackwood case had become national news. The FBI investigation had uncovered evidence of similar operations in other states, other towns where ancient creatures had fed on human life force for generations. Most of the victims had recovered fully, reunited with families who had never stopped looking for them. Detective Martinez had been promoted to head the new federal task force investigating supernatural crimes. Apparently, Blackwood wasn't the only monster hiding in plain sight. As for Ethan and me, we started a support group for families of the missing, because we learned that hope, no matter how faint, should never be abandoned. Sometimes, the people we love find a way to leave us breadcrumbs, a trail to follow them home. And sometimes, if we're brave enough to follow that trail into the darkness, we discover that love really can conquer the monsters that lurk in the shadows. The journal that led us to the truth now sits in our family home, a reminder that some secrets are worth uncovering, no matter how dangerous the journey. Thank you for watching. If you have a missing person case that haunts you, never give up hope. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more mysterious tales. Remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction, and sometimes the monsters are very real.